This episode would not be possible without Anchor. It's free and the easiest way to make a podcast. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome to Lead Today with me, Kalina. Let's talk leadership. Welcome to another episode. Today I have something potentially morose on my mind, but I think that it's a part of everyday life and something that we need to embrace or at least wrap our heads around and feel into differently than at least I can say I have in the past. And I'm talking about death. Not just of a loved one or of a relationship, but even within ourselves, different parts of ourselves, eras within our lives. I've really been feeling this strongly over the past few weeks, and then getting the news of my very close friend's grandmother passing away, growing up with her as sort of like an additional, member of her family, at least, in the sense that I really hung out there all the time from, 10 until, kind of forever. It hasn't ended. And so we wrap our minds and our hearts around death differently when it's sudden or unexpected, or perhaps when the person has lived a long and meaningful life, or if a chronic disease or illness has sort of, let's say, changed the way that they incorporate or deal with their daily lives. If there's something that's making their quality of life while they're still alive excruciating, then we're often not inclined to, we feel like they're going to a better place or they're peaceful now, right? And so it's an interesting thing. It's almost like death is okay, but on our terms and when we're ready for it. And even then, it's not okay because it's still excruciating, and we need to grieve the loss and the change. And really, I think it is an exercise in acceptance and turning over a new leaf to this new reality without that person, whether they died or they just left your life for good. I think about how much I've traveled even over the years and meeting amazing people, and then packing up my suitcase and moving on to the next city. And it's a death of sorts. I mean, not at all to liken that to saying an eternal goodbye, to being able to call your mom on the phone because she's passed away. That's not the same. And I recognize that. But what I can say is it's this act of saying goodbye that makes us feel some sense of permanence, when perhaps, this is just a perhaps, because I'm not saying I have this topic figured out. It's only evaded the human species forever in terms of how do you properly cope? How do you cope with change, with death, with the ending of an era, with the ending of what you had known? It's very poignant because my father is selling my childhood home, and it feels like my entire childhood is being uprooted, when really it's just this physical location, and yet it feels like my heart is being ripped out, and I just want to cry, and I feel like I'm 10 years old again, losing this place that encapsulates childhood for me. Because my best friend, the one I just mentioned, her house, I can see her bedroom from my bedroom window, my childhood bedroom window. And we used to leave our house phones and they would work at the other person's house. I mean, we're talking about neighbors that truly have become family, and a street that it just feels like a true community. And so that's a forever goodbye. I mean, sure, I can go and drive back to that house and look at it and sit there and maybe ask the new owners to come and have a coffee, although they might find me to be a weird the weird lady asking to enter their home because I lived there before. Like there are options, because unless they tear the house down, and then like there's always this sort of spectrum, right? I'm finding that everything is such a spectrum of permanence and impermanence. Nothing is truly permanent, and if you're religious or spiritual in any sense, it's interesting. And I'm filming this after a funeral, so bear with me because the priest's words are in my mind. It was a Roman Catholic ceremony. And, he goes, we start from nothing, we live, we die, and we end as nothing. And it's kind of that dust to dust mentality. And if you're not religious and you kind of think that's kooky, well, is it? I mean, we show up, we're born, we live, and we die. It's not. I think that religion just looks to encapsulate it in a means of saying we're returning back home, we're returning to a place of peace, we're returning back to where we began, which is just, in the dirt, right? Back from nothing in terms of our physical composition. And so if you don't believe in a soul or past lives and future lives and multiple lives, and depending on what you believe about life after death, I think we can all agree on the fact that when you die in this physical body, that's the end of this physical life, this physical body, this physical experience, what you that you know yourself to be. Me as Kalina, that ends when Kalina dies. And, does that mean my energy is gone? Does that mean that my legacy doesn't live on? All the work I do, my aim in my career has, as a career coach, it's not just about getting a promotion. It's not just about loving your job. Who cares? At the end of your life, honestly, right? If we're being real, who cares? At the end of your life, this is about having a legacy, leaving behind something meaningful, right? Like, what are you going to be remembered for? It's not about all the reports you wrote. Nobody's going to write. There's an amazing quotation that I use from Ariana Huffington. It's in my book, which... passion project that will wrap up when it's supposed to. That's all I can say about anybody asking me about my book. We're on the edge. But in her quotation, she talks about how essentially at people's eulogies, they don't necessarily talk about, how you're the best VP of sales or director of a tech company. They talk about how you loved, how you lived, your family, your friends, the type of person you were. And so we're here for legacy. We're here for these interpersonal connections, how we treat people. And when I think about that for myself, I can think of some good qualities and I can think of some critical things, I can definitely be impatient and very disagreeable. If I don't agree with something, I'm going to speak up and say it. And that can cause friction, of course, in relationships, for better, for worse. It does lead to some good outcomes as well. But oftentimes it can create relational friction. There's also the fact that I think I'm pretty inquisitive and decently generous with my time and affection for my loved ones. And so when we consider death, it's just another change, another leg in our journey. And don't get me wrong, that can mean crying on the couch for weeks. Like, that can mean just totally melting into a puddle on your couch and reveling in the life that was just, people say lost, but, that's moved on, that's no longer in its form, that you can't reach out and call and can't hear the voice anymore. I get it. I get it so strongly. Actually, where the burial was today was where my grandfather and my great-grandmother, his mom, actually, are buried. And so, being in that place, and you just, there's I want to say hundreds, if not over 1,000. Maybe I'm being, at least hundreds of all of these tombstones, and there's a mausoleum where they're cremated people, and it's absolutely not awe-inspiring the way it is when you look at a mountain or something, But just the sheer amount of lives that have come and gone in this one cemetery, let alone globally, it's another one of those humbling things for me, because of how impermanent life is, because we're all going to die, because what are we here for? What's our purpose? You know, this priest today, he asked, why are we here? What's your mission? Like, what did you come here to be? What did you come here to do? And I think we're all searching for that in one way or another, whether it's through the parent we're aiming to be, the partner, you know, husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, the daughter, son, friend, sister, the way that we do our work. It's all in our interconnectedness of how we have these relationships and the value that we bring to others in the world through what we do. What value are we bringing? And how do we make this world better? What is our means of making this world a better place? It's a big question to posit. It's something I think you could philosophize about for a lifetime, and maybe that's what philosophers do. So I'm not sure the aim of this episode, other than to maybe serve as a reminder that death is such a part of our experience, and there's small, tiny deaths every day in, again, just even who we are. So even if we're not dying in a literal physical sense, if a relationship ends, or you move out of your house, or you leave a job, these endings they can be excruciating and difficult, but there's always a beginning around the corner. And I think everybody has this period of time in between endings and beginnings where they need to sort of consolidate and take time to kind of come to terms with the new beginning and the next day. But if there wasn't death, there would not be that renewal. It's a necessity. And it's actually interesting. Within the hour that I found out that my friend's grandmother passed away, I found out that another friend of mine just had her baby in Switzerland. And so it just, I mean, obviously, okay, coincidental, people are dying and being born every second, but it was just in that moment of sitting there and going, oh, that's such tough news, and being on the receiving end of, oh wow, that's amazing, you just had a kid, like all in the same minute. I kind of had this full spectrum of emotion. I don't know, it's not often that you have both sides at the same time, and I just felt this rush of like, wow, what a new opportunity for this little baby to come in and do something in this world. And you know, a wife, a mother, a grandmother who lived such a beautiful long life and gave so much love, knowledge, wisdom, care to her kids and her grandkids, and was such an example of an amazing mom, wife, and grandma. And it almost brings me to tears. I mean, it does bring me to tears to think that we just get such a small fleeting chance to do something. And you know, we get to choose if we kind of just drudge through the days and get through our to-do lists and do what we should do and just kind of soldier on through our day, or if we really immerse ourselves into the present moment and a day-to-day experience. And the more I look at what death serves as a reminder to me as, is that impermanence is the name of the game, and everything is fleeting. And so if you think that your childhood home or your relationship or your kids being toddlers and not sleeping and you just wanting to scream, like any of that, it's all good. If there are moments of frustration, feel those out so fully, and then return to that loving place of your kid's only going to be this age for today, and then tomorrow's a whole other world. And I think that's actually why sunsets and sunrises are so magical and awe-inspiring, because it really does, in a very primitive or perhaps primal, not primitive, but primal sense. Like we feel that it's a new day, it's a new beginning. And then when the sun sets and there's darkness, it does feel like the end, the death, the night. And so within every day, we have this chance to sort of reset and remember. I remember in the interview a couple episodes ago with Dr. Bradley Campbell, he actually mentioned a sign that he has about death. And I think it's interesting to have this kind of very front and center reminder of death. I think it's in his kitchen. Or above his kitchen or something. That thought that we need such a in our faces reminder, and that's what funerals do in these sudden deaths, or when, again, we have a change of a life event or the end of a relationship. But what if, if I go back to my beginning point of, it's about, we feel often better about it when we choose, or we feel we have some control over it, like somehow, or if we're okay with it if it was kind of a long time coming and they had a good life, and it's still, I think it's still excruciating. Like no way you slice it, if your mom passes away, it's a loss I can't even imagine, because I haven't dealt with yet. But just witnessing that and seeing her kids, some of them just completely just release all sense of holding on to any kind of composure and just let it out. I know that emotion and that release is so vital, and it's no amount of preparation to say, okay, I know that this really important person in my life is going to die on X date. We know that that's not going to help us, right? Even if we knew the day, if somebody could tell you the day that you were going to die, you would not want to know, right? How weird would that be? We don't want to know. In some sense, knowing doesn't help us either. But what if we just know that it's finite? What if we know that it's coming? What if the fear of death to some degree, and not to stress you out to not live your life, but let's call it then the knowing of the realness of death, that it gets, that all of us will die, that sort of fact that this is so impermanent. What if we transmute that to gratitude and this kind of new lease on life, where we say, hey, I get this kind of one chance in this body, in this life, in this, with this, as Colleen, I get this one chance. When I go from that sad kind of, we're all gonna die, I'm gonna miss this person, I miss this old part of my life, I miss childhood, I miss the relationships, I miss how we were. When I go from that to, well, okay, wow, that's not coming back, but how do I want to make this next chapter? What am I going to do and to fully claim and grasp this next phase? I think when we get stuck in the nostalgia and then miss the present moment, that's where we go astray. And of course, if we just worry about the future, that's no help to us either, because it hasn't happened yet, so we can't do much about that. We can prepare for things, but not marginal benefit in worrying about the future just perpetually. That kind of, say, it's almost diminishing returns if we talk about just this rumination that we do. So if living in the past is no good and living in the future is just kind of hypothesizing without any data, then the present is really what we need to put our full and sole attention on at all times. And if that's the case, if that's what we say, okay, so we're going to focus on the present moment at all times, then what do we do with that? There's so much to focus on. Like, sometimes, I know everyone's got kind of their vice or their way of relaxing, whether it's Netflix. We want to just turn off and not have to focus too much on the present, not have to attend and use our energy to attend to things. But what if there are ways to be in the present moment without such diligent effort? And I know meditation helps. I'm trying to think of what else. Anything physical, right? Yoga, or spending time with someone, or playing with your kids, walking your dog, getting outside, like anything that's within your present world. I can certainly say with my work, everything being very virtual, sometimes it feels very disconnecting from the real world, quote unquote, right? Like the real physical, what's in front of me. And then I get back to that first thing about. It's all about our relationships. It's all about those real connections that we make, that the guy I talked to at Home Depot about about air filters and being there to hug my friend when her grandma passes away. And it all might seem so cliche, but those fleeting little, seemingly trivial or just basic moments, we all know that those are the ones that matter. So, I don't have death figured out in this episode for you, but I hope this serves as a brief and meaningful reminder whenever you're choosing to listen to this. Maybe it's the reminder you need to get a new lease on life. Maybe create some endings that you know have sort of been dragging along for a while, and cut the cord and be ready to go off into your new day, your new beginning, your new fresh start. We can all create fresh starts in our lives. We all try to do it with this perpetual diet culture, like, oh, the diet starts Monday. Everybody makes that joke around Christmas time. It's like, you know, and I'm not advocating for that. What I'm advocating for is we can choose. We can choose who we're going to be, how we're going to show up, what we say. And I think that that's where we need to put our focus. And the endings that occur around us, we can grieve together and support each other in those endings. And then we need to find our new day. And for anyone that's lost someone recently, or just has someone they've lost that is on their mind, I think the knowing that you can always think of a great memory of them, or just close your eyes and just kind of feel their presence. Like, I can think of, there's so many calling cards of my grandfather that I don't need to be at the cemetery or in his house or looking at a photo of him to remember, right? I mean, he's with me always in his legacy and the things I learned from him and the stuff there are things that I do that I'm sure the way he did them, and that's what it's all about for me. So if there's someone it's been on your mind and you're missing, I just send you and them so much love, and I hope you know that you can always reconnect to them no matter where they are right now. And with that, I hope you have a very loving, seize the day rest of your week, or until the next time we get to be in this dialogue together. And I hope that this has brought you some solace and some, I guess, excitement about endings, because it really is a full circle. And so if something is ending, it means there's something new around the corner for you, new around the corner for your family, new around the corner for something coming. So with that, my timer has gone off. It means that we've gotten to our time. Talk about endings. I have a hard time saying bye on the ending of this show, because it's just so easy to keep going. But I'm aiming for shorter episodes so that they're more digestible. If you have feedback on those, please feel free to share. If you'd like to support the show to remain ad-free, please do so using the link, even a $5 donation to the show, so I can make it awesome and continue to add great guests. I would love to have your support, and the most important thing is that you continue to listen. So thanks so much for giving me your time, your precious time, spending it with me, and talk to you soon.